Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. So wonderful to have you all with us this morning. I am the Reverend William Levwood, affectionately known as Rev Lev. My pronouns are he and him. I'm so happy you joined us this morning. We open and welcome to the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests in the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and the realization of justice with the people of this land who live on and their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomic Indian Tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing so that all, together, shall one day know full justice.
I'm Paulette Lichtman-Panzer, and I'm happy to be your worship associate for today. If you aren't new to Accotink, look around. Do you see people you haven't met, have met, or maybe haven't met before? Maybe you haven't seen them for a while. Help us live up to our mission to be a welcoming and inclusive spiritual home for all by reaching out and making a connection. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we encourage you to stay for our social hour, online and in person, immediately after the service.
Right now, I'd like to invite you to rise in body or in spirit to join in reciting our chalice lighting words, which you'll see on the screen. At the bottom there, it says act for justice, which you might not be able to see as well. So let's say these words from our mission statement. Together, we care in community. Together, we grow in spirit. Together, we act for justice. So our theme this month, we work with monthly themes here from Soul Matters, and our theme this month is invitation. Last Sunday, we talked about being a generous host, what that looks like, how we have to toggle back and forth between being really warm and welcoming and sometimes also being assertive to protect the experience that people have shown up to have in any, whether it's a dinner party or a Sunday service. And that what we're really looking for in church, what we're really looking for in all the moments, not just Sunday services, but committee meetings and movie nights and all the gatherings, we want bonding. We want to open up to each other, want to have ourselves and that opening up affirmed. And then we want to stretch just a little bit more with that foundation. Once we've bonded and opened up and been met with affirmation, then we want to stretch into some uncomfortable places and start sharing a little more deeply. So that's what we talked about, generous hosting last Sunday. This Sunday, we're going to talk about generous hosting in another way, starting with really being a generous host to all of what life brings our ways, including and especially the hard stuff. It begins with a mother who was very, very sad. She was sad because her beloved child was sick. So she bathed him and she gave him medicine and she did everything she knew to do to make him better. But nothing was helping. So finally, in desperation, she did one last thing. She went to the Buddha. She'd heard him teach many times before, his stories and teachings full of wisdom. The Buddha was the wisest person she could imagine. So this mother, she thought maybe the Buddha knew how to heal her sick child. So she went to the Buddha and she told how sick her child was and how she tried everything she knew. She said, "You are the wisest person on earth. If anyone can help my child, it must be you. In her heart, she thought, please, please, let it be you. But the Buddha saw what the woman couldn't let herself see, which is that the child was no longer sick. The child has actually died. And the Buddha knew that there was nothing he could do for the child. He thought maybe there was something he could do for the child's parent. So he told her that he could make a special medicine for the child, but to make this medicine, he would need the woman to find a rare ingredient. That he needed her to bring him a mustard seed, but not just that this mustard seed had to come from a house in which none who lived there had ever experienced pain or loss. He told her, go door to door and bring me a mustard seed from each house that you find that is free of sadness, loss, and death. So the woman, in her desperation, she went from door to door, house to house. She said, my child is dying, but the Buddha said if I could find a seed from a home in which no one has ever been sad or known death or been lonely or experienced loss, if I could find a mustard seed from a house like that, then maybe my child could be healed. Have you ever been sad? Have you known loss? And at each and every home she went to, each and every one, regrettably, each person said, I'm sorry, I cannot give you the mustard seed because here in this house, we have known loss. We have known loneliness. We have known death. So after she'd gone to each and every house and received the same response, she returned to the Buddha. And the Buddha asked if she had found a mustard seed to make this special medicine. And she answered, no, I have no mustard seed. For there is no house in the entire village in which no one there had at some time been sad or experienced loss or been in pain. But I have found that there is another medicine, as you knew that I would find. She said that she learned that though there was nothing the Buddha could do to help her child, she had also learned that she wasn't alone. That she wasn't alone. That as sad as she was, she now knew that others had cried tears of loss before her, and others would cry tears of loss after her. And that the special medicine is to share our sorrows and to be there for each other.
Good morning. Daniel Schmutz has been connected to Beacon House for over a decade, originally joining the organization in 2014. In 2019, she moved to a new opportunity, working to improve health outcomes across the U.S. and globally. 6 months ago, Danielle returned home to Beacon House as interim executive director to support the organization through a leadership transition. She was just named permanent executive director and will begin her new role at the end of the month. So Danielle, congratulations. Welcome to Accotink, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much to Nancy, Marcia, Rev Lev, and the entire church community for inviting Beacon House and me to share our story today and to be a part of your service. Beacon House has had a long history with your congregation. In 1991, our founder, Reverend Robinson, a UU minister and retired DC government social worker, started Beacon House as a community ministry. When he launched his ministry, he returned to one of the most disconnected and at-risk communities he had worked with during his time as a social worker. He began this work, Beacon House, from a small basement apartment in the Edgewood Terrace affordable housing community in DC by providing meals and after-school homework help to a dozen or so kids, growing to today to serve over 400 K-12 kids and their families annually. As he launched this work, he rallied the support of the UU churches in the DMV, including Accotink, to be a part of this mission to promote education for at-risk youth. UU supported Beacon House as volunteers, as board members, writing our first bylaws. UUs supported Beacon House financially. UUs were hands-on in painting and building furniture, wiring our space, and tutoring children in reading and math. Beacon House is named to represent the light in a storm, a safe haven for kids and families where they are always welcome and supported. Beacon House is unique in that in addition to promoting academics and success in school and in life, Beacon House has also fostered a deep sense of community and longevity of relationships. The true magic of Beacon House lies in our mentoring approach, which is integrated into all of our programs and interventions, from our after-school education program to our championship-winning athletics program. Our mentors, coaches, volunteers, and staff have long tenures with the organization, providing stability and consistency in the lives of the children that we serve. Over this next year, our athletics program will be celebrating its 25th anniversary. 2 of our coaches were recently reflecting on their journey with Beacon House, having guided the same group of kids from kindergarten in their 5U team through middle school in their 13U team, preparing them for high school sports teams and instilling in them values and skills of teamwork, collaboration, education, and how to handle wins and losses on and off the field. This year, these coaches are now beginning anew with a fresh group of 5-year-olds. They're ready to mentor them through middle school and beyond. UUs, too, have been a part of the fabric of Beacon House from the beginning, fostering community, inclusivity, connection, and fighting for racial justice. And the UU fingerprints will continue to be a part of our work forever. Despite enormous success in building 3 generations of community, today our kids face new challenges. There has been an increase of violence in our neighborhood, mental health concerns have been amplified, and kids' needs are changing. There's more to do to ensure that our kids have the tools and support that they need to succeed in school and in life. Beacon House is the legacy not just of Reverend Robinson, but also of your church. UUs have been the backbone of our work, and the outcomes our kids reach is woven into Accotink's impact as a church as well. This is a tremendous legacy and one that we intend to continue and evolve in order to support the next generation of kids and shape the future of our kids and alumni today. Thank you for your continued support and engagement, and I look forward to talking with many of you during the coffee hour. Thanks.
I'm going to share a reading by Rumi. And I suspect that there's no Unitarian church anywhere in the world that doesn't quote Rumi many times during a year. He was a poet, a philosopher, a genius. It's called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty it of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. It may be clearing you out for some new delight. the dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
Be grateful for whoever comes. Just as we likely quote Rumi multiple times in a year, I imagine that most ministers have given a sermon based on this particular poem, most UU ministers. But this is the first time for me. And this translation you just heard is from Coleman Barks. It's a translation of a poem from Rumi, who was a 13th century Sufi Muslim. It's a rather liberal translation. It's true to the main meaning. It keeps the poetry of the original, even as it isn't true to the literal meaning of each word in the poem. Welcome and entertain them all, the poet tells us. Be grateful for whoever comes. That phrase, be grateful for whoever comes, from the 13th century Muslim poet, is so similar to slogan number 13 in the Tibetan Buddhist Lojong teachings, usually translated as be grateful to everyone. So both the 13th century Muslim poet Rumi and the Tibetan Buddhist teacher Geshe Chekawa are giving the same, or at least similar, advice. Slogan number 11 from the same Lojong teachings, that just means mind or mind-heart trainings. Slogan 11 puts it this way: transform all negatives into the path of awakening. Transform all suffering, all sorrow, all mistakes into the path of awakening. The Rumi poem, in another translation, it's a bit more true to the original, elaborates. If sorrow seems to stand in our way, remember it is also preparing the way for joy. Sweeping your house clean, scattering the withered leaves from the heart so that fresh green leaves may grow. Transform all negatives into the path of awakening. Do that, the Lojong teachings tell us, in the service of bodhicitta, the awakened heart mind. That's what bodhicitta means, the wise and loving intention that you connected with in the meditation at the beginning. That's at the center of our beings, perhaps at the center of all life. Now, when I first encountered these Lojong teachings, I thought they were brilliant. They're called the fast track to enlightenment because you go directly towards the difficult stuff, which there is always plenty of in life. And you use that. You use the difficult stuff. You treat it like rich soil for love to grow in, or like fuel for the hearth fires or chalice flame of love. But putting these teachings into practice, maybe it's called the fast track, but not many people take on these Lojong teachings because putting it into practice is another thing entirely. And one of the foundational ways to put it into practice is, part of the Lojong teachings is the Tonglen meditation. Breathing in pain and suffering and breathing out love, which I also thought was brilliant, though I might add that not everyone does, of course. Many people's first response when they learn about Tonglen meditation is to ask incredulously, why would I breathe in the bad stuff? And I get that. It's counterintuitive. It goes against our natural instincts to move away from pain and towards pleasure. But I think that's what's so brilliant about it, that it inverts our natural instincts to move away from pain and invites us into the practice of moving towards pain. So I think it's brilliant, and I have completely and utterly failed in my attempts to practice it. I mean, I don't think I've ever been able to do Tonglen meditation for more than maybe like 10 or 15 minutes tops. And never for maybe like 3 days in a row. Maybe that's the best I've done, if that. It's just so hard. It's just so hard to breathe in sorrow and suffering, to choose to make that a practice. Now, I think there's a couple reasons in particular why I've struggled to put this into practice. First, I think we, or at least I, got confused. And I think, even if I wouldn't put it this way, I think that pain is the opposite of pleasure, and that pleasure is the opposite of pain, that pleasure will be my reward for moving towards the pain, that awakening or enlightenment, in fact, is synonymous with pleasure, or at least with the cessation of pain. But poet and essayist Ross Gay has written more than one book about gratitude and delight and joy, and so he gets asked a lot about joy, and he gets asked in particular, how can you even talk about joy at a time like this when there's so much suffering in the world? And he says that when people ask that question, he thinks we're often confusing what joy is and isn't. That we're thinking, not only confusing joy with pleasure, but thinking that joy is the opposite of sorrow. But joy, Gay writes, it's often imagined to be the result of organizing our closets and bookshelves, or of getting a new Tesla, or acing the tests, or getting a promotion, or getting our dishes sparkling clean. When in reality, not in reality, joy, he continues, the thinking goes, joy is that room at the top of a flight of stairs that upon entering washes you with clean air and glad music and comfy furniture and gentle warmth emanating from the white pine floors, suffused with light pouring in from the enormous windows, with a window seat where you can read a happy book. Now, we've inherited a faith tradition that I think, despite or perhaps even through our best intentions, has encouraged this delusion within us. As Unitarian Universalists, we trust our ability as human beings to make ourselves better and to make the world a better place. 19th century Unitarian minister William Ellery Channing, the most influential minister, most likely, of Unitarianism of the 19th century, called this self-culture. And UU minister Reverend Nancy MacDonald Ladd, in her book After the Good News, describes self-culture as a way of nurturing one's inherent goodness through advanced learning, prayerful practice, and acts of mercy. That's certainly a good thing. But Nancy MacDonald Ladd also points out that not everyone has time for all that advanced learning, prayerful practice, or even acts of mercy. That way to salvation requires the kind of leisure that the moneyed classes are able to engage in, or in our time, the middle classes. And even if you have time for it, I think there's another thing that it misses, that it suggests that we can get to that room where we're washed clean of suffering, and that we can do it on our own. But we can't. We can't get perfect, and we certainly can't do it on our own, but on some level, we believe that we are supposed to. That we're supposed to get there, and we're supposed to do it on our own, which leads us to hide our pain from each other. Again, it's a good thing. In our tradition, we aren't hopeless sinners. And because we aren't hopeless sinners, we're supposed to be able to get it all together, to have it all together, to make ourselves and the world better. So that has caused us to think in that middle classness of it all, to show up, that we're supposed to show up every Sunday in our Sunday best, the smile on our face, and our well-behaved, quiet children in tow. And by the way, dressing casually for church, as we often do now in UU congregations, doesn't take away the deeper script behind all of this. It's kind of just a reverse window dressing, if you will. We're still supposed to have it all together. And we can share our joys and sorrows, but we aren't really supposed to break down crying, or God forbid, moan or wail in our sorrow, or quake in the overwhelmingness of our anxiety. We're supposed to keep that in check. We're supposed to pretend we took care of that on our own. Now, the sorrows still seep in, of course, often hidden beneath anger, annoyance, blame. But all of this, I think, is a mistake. Thinking we can escape sorrow when the only way to escape sorrow is to leave behind joy with it. As Ross Gay puts it, I'm pretty sure you only get to do this. You only get to that room at the top, washed clean of sorrow, if you have no relationships, if you love nothing, if you're a sociopath, or maybe if you're enlightened. Though even that, I think, is a misunderstanding of enlightenment. Gay says, nonetheless, I don't know about you, but I check none of these boxes. And Ross Gay, like Khalil Gibran before him, writes that what happens if joy and pain, what happens if joy and heartbreak and sorrow are fundamentally tangled up with one another? Gibran puts it this way in the popular book, The Prophet, writing that the deeper sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. And when you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. So one mistake is to not let in those sorrows and think we can get it all right. And the other is to think we can do it all on our own. I definitely have made that mistake, that I could just do that Tonglen meditation by myself, alone in my room at the beginning or the end of the day, or maybe during my lunch break. This, I want to add, is the danger of cherry picking from other religious traditions without being fully steeped in them. In this case, I focused on just one of the three jewels of Buddhism without the other two. The three jewels of Buddhism are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So I think Tonglen meditation, I think it'd probably be a part of the jewel of Dharma, of the wisdom teachings. But there's also the jewel of the Buddha and the jewel, crucial in this case, the jewel of the Sangha, the community of practice, of companions along the way. And I believe Ross Gay's definition of joy bears this out. he elaborates saying, what if joy is not only entangled with pain or suffering or sorrow, but is also what emerges from how we care for each other through these things? What if joy emerges from how we care for each other through the pain and the sorrow? Because the pain and the sorrow are going to come. There's no room at the top that can keep them out, no matter how big the windows are pouring in natural light, no matter how comfy the couch is. We will all die. And everything and everyone we love will also die. There is no escape from that. I'm getting that from Ross Gay, but it's also part of the Buddhist tradition. It's known as the 5 remembrances, that we all get old, we all get sick, we all die, and that all this is also true for everything and everyone we love. There is only so much we can do to stop suffering from happening. And of course, when that suffering comes from oppression and injustice, we should do all we can to stop it from happening, or from continuing, rather. Still, there is only so much we can do to stop suffering from happening altogether. But we can choose to take the journey together. We can choose to be a human guest house together, welcoming in whatever guest comes to the door. Whether that guest be a joy, a depression, a meanness, or a crowd of sorrows, we can welcome the guest into our human guest house and be generous hosts for that guest, for those sorrows, anxieties, pain, but together. Only together. Only together are we able to do this. Because I think Ross Gay is right, that joy is not only entangled with pain, but is also what emerges from how we care for each other through the pain. So, what if we invite in our sorrow and then invite in everyone else's sorrow? Ross Gay describes this in what I think of as a different kind of stone soup that we can engage in together. A stone soup of sorrow that we eat together, transforming it into joy. What if that, by the way, is the true Eucharist? Taking in that stone soup of sorrow into our bodies. And like the Tonglen meditation, then living love for each other. Ross Gay describes that different kind of stone soup this way. First, by saying, what I am advocating, and adamantly so, is that rather than quarantining ourselves or running away from sorrow, rather than warring with sorrow, we lay down our swords and let sorrow in, invite sorrow in. He continues, I'm suggesting we make sorrow some tea from the lemon balm in the garden. That we give sorrow our dad's slippers that we've hung on to for 15 years for just this occasion. That we ask sorrow about themselves and we smooch closer to hear. Ross Gay is telling us to invite in our sorrows, to open to them. And then he says, take it another step further. He encourages us to invite a small group of friends over for a potluck because we want sorrow to meet them. And then sorrow says, maybe more than just your closest friends. So we add some more people to the list. Co-workers, neighbors, even that annoying neighbor we really don't like. Until looking over your shoulder as you're growing the invite list, sorrow nudges you in the arm and says, maybe just invite anyone with a sorrow to bring along? Couldn't be too many people. Besides, sorrow says, looking around at your little house, this is a good-sized place. So maybe we do this. We invite others to share their sorrows, to come to this big stone soup potluck. We open it up. We say, bring a dish and your sorrows. In preparation, we prepare a few staples, and when guests start showing up, just as your sorrow is pulling the loaves of bread from the oven and you're dressing the salad, Gay says at first, you notice it's just a few people and then a few more until they start coming in twos and threes and squads and families. So you just keep the door open, front and back, because they're coming in droves, bringing their dish and their sorrows. Some of them, obviously, old pros at the potluck with an index card with the ingredients, if it has nuts or gluten or dairy. And some guests with just a box of cookies, or a bag of chips, or a 2-liter they got at Kroger on the way over. And some guests, of course, forgot the goodies. But at this potluck, no one forgets their sorrows, which they introduce to each other. Good to meet you, we shout, smiling and nodding at the sorrow, who also smiles and nods. This is mine, we yell, pulling the spoon from the doll we're eating to point to our sorrow, who takes a bite of the lentils and laughs. It goes on like this, growing louder and more raucous and ramshackle, this potluck of sorrows. A lamp gets knocked off the table, a jade plant topples from the mantle, its clay pot splintering into shards that a few people promptly set about cleaning up and then getting the plant repotted. There are even some kids playing wall ball in the kitchen, marking up the plaster, and when 2 of them stumble into each other and knock heads, and they start shoving, then throwing punches, an old lady and her sorrow jump between them and shout out, "Where the hell are your sorrows?" And the kids, they point with their chins over to the Tarot table. And the old woman marches over there, grabs the sorrows by the elbows and shoves them towards the kids. And they seem to work it out after that. And there's another group sitting on the ground in front of the old wood stove, and they're doing that levitation trick where everyone puts a finger or 2 under the person. Remember that? Me and my sorrow elbow each other and are like, yo, check this out. And no way, because dude isn't small, like really not small, and neither is his sorrow, who is sitting cross-legged on dude's chest. And don't you know, they lift him and his sorrow like they are just about nothing. And the dude's face, which looked kind of somber at first with his eyes closed, just slides into a big surprised smile, and his eyes pop wide open. And after he gasps, he actually cackles up there. I mean, he cackles so hard he cries. And then they kind of drop him and catch him, and they're all laughing and crying, and the thud skips the record back to the beginning of Sly Stone's Family Affair. And the dancing, which has been intermittent, just blasts off. All of us in our sorrows, sweaty and stomping and shaking, tearing it up. The pictures falling off the walls, the books from the shelves, some logs ablaze, even spilling from the stove. Riotous, this care, this carrying, this incitement, this joy. So I invite us not only to today's potluck, but to a potluck of sorrows, where we can all practice being human as a guest house. Practice inviting in every morning that new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. coming as an unexpected visitor, so we together can welcome and entertain them all for ourselves and for each other, even especially if they're a crowd of sorrows. Especially if they're a crowd of sorrows. So we can be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent by a guide from beyond, because joy emerges from traveling together, journeying together with our sorrows. May it be so. May we continue in this community to be that for each other. Amen, 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 and blessed be.
So please rise now in body or spirit and join us in our closing words. As we extinguish our chalice, I invite you to recite together. You can hold hands if you're comfortable with people next to you, or just stretch your arms out a little bit. And David Bumbaugh said, "This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences and beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together, in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity." And I close with these words. Now that we're gathered together in this welcoming and inclusive spiritual home, let us go out into the world, nourished, rejuvenated, and inspired to share our values. Thank you.